Mount Penang Gardens on the New South Wales Central Coast is a stunning place, and I'm really enjoying learning about the history and seeing the amazing collection of plants scattered throughout this intriguing landscape. I'll show you around here a little later on, but first, let's see what else is on this week's show.
Oh, I just love this plant. It takes my breath away. It's Mandevilla laxa, or the Chilean jasmine. It has these beautiful large white flowers which have a really strong, sweet, exotic scent. It makes you think that it would be quite tropical, yet it will take my cold, frosty conditions down to -5.
I'll be showing you how to process large amounts of garden waste by building a simple hot compost heap.
Although this garden looks sleek and tidy, you won't believe the extraordinary efforts that had to be gone to make it look as effortlessly beautiful as it is now.
The inner city can be filled with hard, flat surfaces devoid of any nature, and finding room for a garden can often be difficult. I'm visiting a home gardener in Sydney today who's come up with an innovative solution.
Are you from the ABC?
Hello.
Indira, how
It's lovely to see you again, Quinton. How are you keeping?
Very well.
And while that Ningen spirit has been an inspiration...
Quentin Dempster spent 30 years of his working life with the national broadcaster. And while the Walkley Award-winning journalist is still shining a spotlight into the dark corners of the political world, now in the print media, at home he's trying to cool things down. You're looking very relaxed in this amazingly green space that you've created here.
It's a difficult space because the western sun is there, so it's a hot space, and trying to get it greened up was a big challenge, but I think we got the solution eventually. This is a heritage-listed house, and we've worked hard to be faithful to the heritage values of the conservation and preservation of it. And in that sense, we couldn't do anything which impacted on the ground. So the best solution was the modern green wall. And the thing I've learned about these green walls is you've got to have the irrigation system because they take a fair bit of water. But if you solve that problem and you work assiduously at all the pots, you can get a very good result. But it's great fun as well.
What sort of look and feel and vibe did you want to create?
Something tranquil, something green, and something edible. I didn't realise we had so many edible plants here.
Well, this is a beautiful native violet. Actually, a lot of people may not have come across it, and edible as well.
Yeah.
Delicious, absolutely delicious. And what are some of the other things that you've got growing in this beautiful space?
Look at that up there, that's edible as well.
Let's try some of these berries. There you go, I'll get another one. Quentin, you've not only got edibles growing in your garden, but you've got this beautiful wall here filled with lots of ornamentals, and they're doing so well, they're so healthy.
Well, water and sunlight, even though the light varies during the day, it's not full sun, but Ed, our horticultural guy, has helped us with the selection of the plants that are suitable to these little pots.
And I love the different variegations of the leaves. You've got green leaves here, you've got these beautiful pink speckled leaves and the white. And I think this is what a lot of people don't realise, that with a small space, you can still incorporate so much colour and movement and variety.
Well, the colour and the movement makes all the difference to a work of art. It's a work of art.
You're right, it actually is, isn't it? Green walls are becoming de rigueur in cities, with French botanist Patrick Blanc leading the way. This Sydney apartment block presents a lush face to the city. Ed Warburton has made his life, well, his work life, all about green walls, after his travels to France and Japan inspired him to design his own system. So, Ed, what was it about your travels that gave you the inspiration to set up these vertical wall systems?
Well, the first time I went to France with my wife, we went to a place called the Pershing Hotel, which was the most amazing vertical garden, and it went up about 6 stories inside a courtyard and was what I thought to be the future of gardening.
And in general, what was the brief from Quentin and his wife? What did they want the space to do for them?
They were very flexible, actually, and They were willing to listen to me about planting, but got very involved in planting themselves. And I think that's the real key for this garden, is that they love it and they spend time in it and they look after it.
And how are the plants watered?
Well, what we have is a micro drip line set up here, so dripping into each pot every second row. So we're not flooding from the top to the bottom. We're just giving just enough to pulse water through the system.
And what do you think does best when planted in these sorts of systems?
Bromeliads, aloes, succulents work really well. In terms of edibles, lots of herbs. Nothing that has a deep root system usually goes quite well. This Thai basil is so healthy, and that's just in a tiny little pot. Vietnamese mint, normal basil, chives, oregano, thyme. A lot of things are used really often in your cooking.
It's not an awful lot of work, a couple of hours a week, I suppose, but that becomes a pleasure of itself. And look at this, Indira. We've got our own tomatoes.
Wow, aren't they beautiful?
This is how productive we are. So we've got semi-dried tomatoes, we've got pickled baby cucumbers, we've got chili zucchinis.
Delicious.
And baby carrots.
Wow, so your wife does all the preserving and pickling, that you obviously get some excess produce that you can use this way.
We do, and it makes it all very productive. The Productivity Commission would be delighted.
And delicious as well.
Oh, yes, it makes a complete difference to supermarket food.
And how has it transformed your life?
It's given a sense of productivity, a sense of effort and sustainability, and it's just becomes a pleasure, of course.
And you're looking so happy as well.
That's an added bonus.
What's furry, greeny brown and delicious? Kiwi fruit. It's a deciduous vine from China, and way back when, it was called the Chinese gooseberry. Now, it's a dioecious plant, meaning you need separate male and female plants to produce fruit. The most efficient ratio is 5 females to 1 male, and that's what we've got here. Our females, and our 1 male is growing 15 metres that way behind the fig. It's a long-distance relationship that works. Look at all the fruit. They're a really vigorous climber, so you need to provide them with a robust support. And they're very thirsty with deep root systems, so you need to give them long, deep drinks. And they love full sun. Once the fruit's set, it's time to remove all the whippy growth. This will redirect the plant's energy into the fruit. It also opens up the plant, allowing more air and more sunshine to get in. Keep doing this every week till the fruit ripens, which should be between April and June. It's a bit of work, but it's well worth the effort because the quality of your fruit will be so much better.
Mount Penang Gardens is near Gosford on New South Wales Central Coast. It's a huge public garden, about 156 hectares, with 8 hectares of beautifully cultivated gardens at its heart.
This is the entrance to the gardens. We come across this cantilever bridge, which is 35 metres. It makes a very strong statement as you're coming into the gardens.
Brett Hutchinson is the horticulturist in charge. The overall concept of the garden is to represent the Australian continent. So it's surrounded by water for oceans and high walls as symbolic cliffs. Inside, there are winding paths connecting different areas that celebrate the diversity of plants, in particular Australian natives.
So one of the things we're doing in the gardens is using Australian natives in a way, a bit more of an interesting way to show people different things you can do with it. So here we're using lily pillies and shaping them up into the shape of clouds.
It's really nice, isn't it? I mean, it's simple, but suddenly you see those plants in a different way.
Exactly, and people tend to think you just do your box sort of cut with edging, but no, you can do other things.
This garden is full of great Australian plants like the Gaimea lily. And although Dorianthus excelsa, with its towering red flowers, might be familiar, there are also unexpected surprises like its bigger, more glamorous relative.
This is a palmeri. It's really something, isn't it? People are really impressed by this.
I mean, the big difference between this and the excelsa is that the palmeri actually grows bigger. So for a backyard, you need a lot more space.
You would, yes.
For this one.
Sometimes people feel that natives don't put on much colour.
Yeah, but, you know, you look at a bed like this and I think that's going to change their mind.
Exactly. We've got the native hibiscus, allegoins.
This Grevillea moonlight, I mean, look at it. It's really glowing, shining bright.
It is. It's great. And then we have this striking colour of the kangaroo paws.
Now, kangaroo paws, they look really effective when they're mass planted, but what are some of your tips to looking after them?
Well, mainly taking out all the dead flower heads. I usually take them right to ground level, and depending on your where you are, humidity can be quite an issue with kangaroo paws, so keeping them quite open is a good idea, I find. Apart from that, they don't really need much fertilising, if at all.
It's a big space for Brett to manage by himself, so he's helped out by volunteers. They pitch in with everything from guiding tours to planting and keeping the gardens in tip-top shape. One of the volunteers, Diane Greening, offered to show me some of her favourite spots. So what happened to you, Di?
Oh, Costa, I broke my ankle.
All aboard the Gardening Australia Express?
I'd love to.
I'm ready to go.
Thank you
Get
very
the brakes
much.
off,
Just put
pads down,
Put the foot pads down.
and
Okay,
do
let's
it.
go.
Wow, what a beautiful space.
Yeah, these trees are really magnificent. They're about 85 years old, and they're really interesting trees. I don't think there's anything else around here like them on the Central Coast. These cactuses up here are magnificent because although the cactuses themselves are really, really ugly, when the flowers come out, they are absolutely beautiful.
And I mean, the thing with the cactus and the succulents is that they can handle this ridgetop location.
It's really nice to be able to just be involved in something that you know at the end of the day you've actually done something worthwhile. Yeah, this is lovely. This is called the Colour Field and the Puddle Garden. This is just a nice area for kids to come and spend some time. We actually encourage them to take their shoes off and get in and play in the fountain.
Oh, really?
There aren't any kids around at the moment, so what do you reckon?
There's one big kid here.
One big kid, okay.
Definitely in for that. Oh, yeah, that temperature's nice. Well, I reckon it's worth coming out and exploring Mount Penang for yourself. It's big, it's beautiful, it's open every day, and what's more, it's free.
We've had a couple of very successful growing months here at the patch, but now it's a case of out with the old and in with the new. And the result is there's lots of lovely leftover green matter just begging to be turned into compost. Unlike cold composting, hot composting heaps are built all in one go. Now, for all composting, you need 4 main ingredients: water, air, carbon, or brown matter. In this case, I'm using straw, and green vegetation. I've got all my old crops, but if you don't have enough of these, then you can supplement them with other additives. Things like blood and bone, pelletized chicken manure, and a great source of nitrogen is what most of us have these days: coffee grounds. Great thing is you're using up your household waste, and it's free. I'm going to build the pile up around some supports. In this case, 3 wooden stakes driven into the ground. I'm starting with the straw, or the brown ingredient, into the mix. I'm going to make my pile about 1 metre squared at the base. You need a decent sized pile for composting to actually work and be worthwhile. This will also allow me a good solid base to build everything up around. A lot of people get worried about their ratios of brown to green. Don't get too hooked up about it. It is important, just as long as you've got more brown than your green. Well, there's your rough ratios of brown to green. Now to the additives. Handful of the pelletized chicken manure, sprinkled over the top, and then some lovely coffee grounds. Probably the most essential ingredient when it comes to hot composting is water. You got to make sure that your layer is kept wet as you're building on top of them. So we've got brown, you've got green, accelerant, and water. Think of it like making a continental gatto cake, but instead of chocolate, you've got layer upon delicious layer of beautiful organic matter. You can put wood in your hot compost pile, but it's a good idea to chip it up or cut it up first. And if you've got fibrous material like brassica roots, or in this case, corn stalks, it's a good idea to give them a bash. That should start cooking in about an hour and be ready to harvest in about 6 to 8 weeks. There's no need to be overwhelmed by the amount of garden waste at the end of a growing season, and there's certainly no need to take it off to landfill. Composting is fun and easy, and a great way of providing yourself with soil-improving compost that your next crop will love.
I just love this plant. It takes my breath away. It's Mandevilla laxa, or the Chilean jasmine. It has these beautiful large white flowers which have a really strong, sweet, exotic scent. It makes you think that it would be quite tropical, yet it will take my cold, frosty conditions down to -5. This twining climate is quite vigorous, perfect for covering our portico here. Yet, in a cold climate, it will become deciduous and lose all its leaves. It even gives me beautiful autumn colour with sort of rusty tones before it drops its leaves. But in a warmer climate, it will remain evergreen or semi-evergreen. I think it's a beautiful plant to welcome visitors to my home.
This garden in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne looks the picture of urban elegance, with its streamlined terracing, its restrained palette of plants, and its tasteful accessories. But if you've ever tried dealing with a steeply sloping block, you'll be amazed at what's been achieved here.
This was all clay to start with, so we had to excavate that out. Over here we've got about 50,000 litres of water tanks. They've been pushed in. This is all done with lots of steel, lots of concrete, because it's spanning over voids, so very easy to crack. So we've got to make sure that was all engineered.
Designer Jamie Clapham recalls the Herculean effort that went into taming an incredibly steep slope to create this garden for a very patient and trusting client.
3-month build, maybe, this job. 2 months of it was doing all the underground stuff. Most of the budget was actually in the underground, in the structure.
So, what sort of planting style would you describe this garden as?
Oh, probably more like a woodland effect, I think. With all these Japanese maples, it's a forest that you walk in underneath, and all these low-lying plants, fairly much like the low ground covers you'd find in a woodland, with the star jasmines, the liriopes, the helleborus.
Now, I take it this is a Sakazuki, which must give you splendid autumn colours.
It's a lovely light plant, and it's only going to get to about 4 to 5 metres maximum, so it's great for a garden of this scale.
And then here, we've got a really good evergreen hedge, and it contributes to the privacy too, because you come in through that gate and then you do a zigzag. So this effectively is filling the role of a wall, but it's much softer and gentler than that.
From up the top, you don't see any of the vehicles on the road anymore. So you actually look over the top of it and get the borrowed landscape of the street trees out here.
Now, I also like the way in which, by using this Trachlospermum here, you're softening up the paving. It's quite interesting to contrast the effect you might get if you'd used box hedging as opposed to this, because this does creep out over the paving, doesn't it?
It does. The garden is overlying a lot of hard construction, so we've tried to soften that as much as possible. The star jasmine coming, as you say, does it. Ficus climbing on the retaining walls softens up those surfaces.
And the wonderful Lonicera in the steps.
Yeah, it's a ripper, isn't it? That's great, yeah. So sort of as you come in the staircase and you look up here, the Lonicera actually looks as one hedge. As you approach the steps, it unfolds and reveals the steps behind them. And around here, we've got the back garden.
Oh, well, this is a really nice private space, isn't it? You're really enclosed. And with that pool, too, it'd be a really good recreational area for the family. This is really nice.
Yeah, it works well. Let's grab a seat here.
Now, I can see links between this back garden and the front garden.
We've achieved that here both through the hard materials and the paving, and also through the plant palette. Cycad right here behind us, that's in the front garden as well. We've got the creeping fig that's climbing over the top of the wall. Once again, disguising that major change in the slope that we've got here. Well, I feel the pool fits in here really nicely.
Yeah, it's like a really cool oasis. You can feel it's cool. But that's because it's surrounded with really nice planting that gives it shade. So what have you used here?
Well, this is the agave attenuata.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite plants. It's as hardy as could be. You can just chop it off, put it straight in the ground, it'll keep growing.
And it certainly makes a bold statement next to the water, doesn't it, where you get the reflection.
Yeah.
And then behind it?
It's the Magnolia grandiflora up here, which is doing a really lovely job of screening.
Yep.
And we've got the Ficus pumila following on from the front garden.
And that makes that wall really soft. It doesn't look like masonry anymore.
No, and it's climbing across the top of the pool really nicely through here.
Yep. Drawing on his extensive design expertise, Jamie has some great tips that you could use at your place.
This garden, we've actually got a lot of slope, but I think even if you have the smallest amount of slope, you should try and utilise it. Bring a couple of stairs into your garden layout. Always adds more interest. People plant just the perimeter. Bring the trees forward into your garden. It gives you shelter, it gives you a sense of space, gives you something to light. Like garden lighting is one of the magics of gardening. Too many people dismiss it as not important, but we spend a lot of time in our gardens at night time, and it really does bring the magic through. The other thing that's really important is indoor-outdoor. That seamless living between the two. It's you want to use your garden, you know. So the closer you bring the garden to you, the more you're going to use it.
Jamie, what is it that gives you particular pleasure about this garden?
Oh, it'd have to be the sense of the private oasis, the greenery, the forest effect, and the amount of enjoyment the clients seem to get out of it.
Earlier in the show, I visited the spectacular Mount Penang Gardens on the New South Wales Central Coast. And like so many of our public gardens, it's kept looking great by the work of volunteers. And while we're on the topic of volunteers, next week is actually National Volunteers Week, a great opportunity for us to celebrate and recognise the wonderful work done by volunteers nationwide. So why not get out there and see how you too can contribute? That's all we've got time for this week, but let's see what's coming up on next week's show. I'll see you then.
Surely one of the most versatile of all vegetable families is the alliums, which includes garlic and onions. And this weekend is the time to plant.
The Volunteer Task Force was established in the 1970s. Its mission is to provide services which support the independence and enhance the safety and well-being of the elderly and physically challenged.
Slowly but surely, we Australians have taken to using our native flora as ornamental plants. But what about using them as food plants? I'll be showing you what's good to eat and how to prepare it